Absolutely.
Hello and welcome to your Inspired to Resign weekly wisdom. I am Tammy Jaffe, your host, helping you go from employee to entrepreneur. And I am so excited about my guest today because we share a few things in common. And we met at a mastermind just a couple months ago where he was going through and talking about what he did. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that was so me a little while ago. And so we just had this great connection. We had to talk. And I'm like, you've got to come on the show and share your story with me. So I am excited to present to you today Paul Kahn. He is a high performance and executive coach, keynote speaker, and host of the Yes, I Can podcast. He is also a co-founder of 2 startups and has coached high performers from Olympians to CEOs to multi-six-figure entrepreneurs to break through their limiting beliefs, unleash their highest potential, and bring their vision to life. His mission is to help corporate executives who are burnt out, unhappy, and unfulfilled discover their purpose, who they truly are, and what they're meant to do. And we are going to be talking today about how to escape a death by cubicle, because I know so many of you are having that feeling of stuck in the job, stuck in a cubicle or office or wherever you are and not being able to get out. So Paul, tell us a little bit about how you got started and what got you to where you are now.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to have this conversation with you this morning and to, have a conversation with your community as well. I think it is such an important one right now. I think it just with everything that's happening, for myself, I came from corporate, and for me growing up, going through school, I really truly thought that my goal in life is to get into an incredible company, move my way up, move up the corporate ladder, have that stability, that house, the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, and life is going to be perfect. And I truly thought that that was it. Like, that is what it's going to take. And, I came from immigrant parents, so they worked and worked and worked, and they just talked about working all the time and working until finally you have the money to have the life that you've always wanted. And so when I got out of school and I got into a Fortune 500 company, I thought, okay, this is awesome. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I started working my way up the corporate ladder. And as I still remember this moment, and I had this mentality of, I'm going to grind it out, I'm going to do whatever it takes, and it's totally going to be worth it in the end. And I just remember this moment when I was a district manager at one point, and I was managing a $13-14 million district. There was about over 20 employees that were working for me. And it was a role where, first of all, I had to move. I didn't know anybody in the city, and I moved there. And I just remember this very distinct moment when everything that I thought was what I wanted, I not only questioned it, but I thought to myself, there's just got to be another way. And there was this moment where I remember my employee the day before had just quit, and it was this location in the middle of nowhere, 2.5 hours away from where I was. And he just quit and says the keys, everything's in the truck, I'm done. And so I just sent another employee to go up there and cover for him. And I just finished a full day. It was 12 hours and I was ready to go home. I was really exhausted. I remember I got this phone call and my heart just sank. I'm like, oh man, like this, I feel like it's not going to be good. And my employee, who was the relief rep that I had sent up there, told me he pulled us back. So I was so frustrated. I'm like, okay, well, I went home, packed my bags, drove 2.5 hours out, and I finished the route for him. And after I had to deal with all the different customers that were unhappy because they're like, well, here's another employee that didn't last again, I pulled the truck back to this tin bin, and it was middle of nowhere, and that's where it housed all our inventory. And I just like rolled up the door, and just staring back at me was rows and rows and rows of cardboard boxes. And before the night was done, I had to count every single bag of chips, nuts, and seeds in this bin and in the truck. It was minus 40 degrees out, Fahrenheit. And I know it's Fahrenheit. I come from Canada, but I know it's Fahrenheit because at minus 40, it's the same for Fahrenheit and Celsius. And as I was just like, trying to move my body, like I could just feel like my fingers and my toes were just freezing. Like I couldn't feel my face, and I was already exhausted. And after I finished counting everything, I was like, okay, finally I'm done. And I looked at the very front of the bin, and there was a stack of cardboard that was from the floor all the way to the ceiling that I had to strap by hand still. And then pop, the lights went out. And I just broke down in that moment because I just thought to myself, why am I here? Like, my parents had told me all these stories of the different things that they went through in order to get to Canada and the life that we now have. But in that moment, I'm like, is this really what it takes? Like, is this really what it gets to look like in order for me to finally get to where I want to go? And, that moment really made me question that, is there another way? And, I thought that when the situation changed, like when I got out of that job that I just really didn't like, and I got to head office, and it was, the bright, shiny glass building on the 8th floor at the very top. And, everything's going to change because things are going to be more exciting. The customer is going to be different. The situation is going to be different. But here's the thing, is that the situation changed for a little bit, but actually underneath it, things didn't change, because underneath it, I was still a workaholic. Underneath it, I still had this mentality that work comes first, and I was burnt out, and my marriage came at the expense of it. And I wasn't emotionally present, and I was disconnected all the time because all I could think about was this never ending pile of work that I still had, and I'd be bringing work home. And it got to a place in my life where I had started developing all these different symptoms of things I just couldn't really explain. I started getting sleep apnea. I never had that before. I started having chest pains, and I had so much anxiety at work, and it would take so much for me to work through that. And I'm like, okay, like, is this all there was? And I looked around me, and everybody I could see was burnt out. Everyone was busy all the time on this like perpetual, like running on this treadmill of like, okay, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And it just seemed like it would never end. And it got to a place in my life where over 2 years ago, my marriage was completely falling apart. And, we were on the verge of separation. And I just realized I had no joy in my life. I was standing in Bali, and I'm like, everything on the outside looks amazing. Like, I'm making the money. I have an incredible job. I actually like I was good at what I did. And at the same time, I'm like, why do I feel miserable right now? Like, what is that? And I realized what was underneath all of it was that not only had I lost myself in my job because my job had become who I was, it was my identity, and I didn't really know who I was without it. And so I leaned fully into it. And at the same time, that I was so busy running this treadmill that I didn't enjoy any other part of my life. Like, it was this kind of robotic way of living. And I thought that, you know what, it's only going to get to a certain point. Like, when I make a certain amount of money, then things are going to get good. Or when I get to this point in my career, then I'm going to feel fulfilled. I'm going to feel happy. But then I realized that it's this a horizon that we're chasing. It's a marker that once you get there, it just moves. So you never actually get there. And so I was lacking so much fulfillment in my life because I just realized, okay, if I die tomorrow, like, what is the impact that I would have made? And it wasn't much, to be honest. It's like, hey, I did my job, but I did nothing outside of that. And I didn't deeply feel like I was fulfilling a purpose that was greater than that. And it was coming at the expense of everything in my life. I was exhausted. I was, 20 pounds overweight. I was, my marriage was falling apart. And I was just like, this doesn't work. And that was the first time when finally my wife was like, you know what? Like, I either have to leave or I feel like I'm going to die here. Like, I can't stay here. And I'm like, something drastically has to change. And when I went in to finally do the inner work, and I realized, wow, there's so many different things that I had used work to numb. I had used work as a way for me to feel enough. And I was constantly trying to fill more and more of it. But the more I tried to do that, the more empty I felt. And I also didn't realize there was another way. And so after when I got on the other side, I realized, wow, like, I can create the life that I want. And it doesn't have to come at the expense of everything that's important to me in my life. Because I see so many people that are in this place where they are, not, their marriage is kind of plateaued. They don't have the emotional bandwidth to really be connected to their kids or the people that are closest to them. They haven't spent any time for themselves in terms of doing things that they personally love. And you get to a place where you're like, wow, how do I get here? And so when I looked at that, I'm like, wow, what if we could start living with, instead of having goals, starting with the end in mind, what if we lived with the end in mind? What does that look like for us at the very end of our life when we're looking back? Right before this, we talked about my father-in-law that has pancreatic cancer, and he worked his whole life to support his 8 children on his back. And he's like, finally, when I retire, like, I just can't wait to start living. And then he got cancer. And all I hear is this narrative of regret. Like, I wish I didn't work so hard. I wish I started living. Like, I wish I didn't wait till the end. And so that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I believe that time is the best thing that we have at the moment. And if you have time, you have an opportunity to change your situation. It doesn't have to be this way. There is many other possibilities. And what if you can start living with the end in mind, the end that you want, in terms of looking back, you feel 100% complete. You feel like you were fully authentically yourself. You lived a life where you felt fully alive. So that's a little bit about my journey and why I'm so passionate about the work that I do.
Yes, I love it. I love the passion behind what you do and the way you explain it, because I think there's so many pieces in there that I was like, yes, yes, yes. But some of the things that I think so many people can relate to is we're told that we have to do one thing to be successful. We're told in your case that, you had to work and work and work to earn the things that you wanted in a job and became the workaholic. I grew up on a farm where I saw my dad work 16-hour days every day being a farmer, and then, would lose it to, one year would be a flood, another year would be drought. And, there was times that it was all taken away. And but I learned the hard work. And so when I start, I'm like, I'm not going to be the farmer. I'm not like working my ass off of my hands. So I became a CPA, right? I became an accountant. I'm like, I'm going to sit behind the desk, but I still became a workaholic. I still learned that value of working hard, and had similar situation where my husband's like, if you do not put that phone away, I'm going to throw it in the ocean. I don't know how many times I heard that when we were on vacation. Like, I'm going to throw your phone in the ocean, because you're just constantly connected to it and looking for that value in what you do, looking for that fulfillment in what you do, because you feel like if you can contribute to what you're doing, it's going to make a difference. And for you, you got to that point where you're looking around and going, what is this getting me? What legacy am I leaving with this? And I went through a similar situation and hitting kind of that glass ceiling and realizing, like, why am I working so hard for someone else's dreams? Like, why am I not working towards my own dreams? And I think we all go through those moments in our lives where you just have to stop and you have to look around and say, what is this doing for me? How is this making an impact? What do I need to do and what do I need to change? And I know that neither of us believe that it's 100% of the time, go quit your job, right? So let me hear from you why you think, quitting your job may or may not be the answer for some people.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I do hear this narrative around, okay, well, I've had it with this job. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to go start my own company and I won't have to deal with this anymore. And next thing you know, you have these entrepreneurs that are in this whole new world by themselves, and they realize the grass is not greener on the other side, because they take where they were. What I call it is you're trading one jail cell for another with a different view. Because if you don't look at the leadership, the mindset, the limiting beliefs that are underneath that first, then what ends up happening is you just trade one situation for another, but the underlying root problem doesn't go away. Because I have met tons of entrepreneurs that quit corporate, started their own company, and are still burnt out and are still miserable, because now the problem is different, but the situation is very, very similar in terms of, having that burnout come up and having that situation where they still don't have time for their families. If anything, maybe things have gotten worse, because as a company, as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, you are the everything at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And it's so important to understand the intention underneath, because I truly believe that not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur, and that's okay. And for some people, it's like, yes, you are meant to be an entrepreneur. At the same time, it's really important to take care of, understand what was really underneath, what was not working, where you're at in terms of,
Mhm.
okay, that you talked about the working hard mindset that you got from your dad. I had the same thing. My parents would tell me the story all the time of how they used to scrub toilets at McDonald's when they first moved to England, and they lived in a dinky, shared a bedroom with like multiple people, and how hard they worked in order to get to where they were. And I took that subconsciously with me, where I felt like my mindset around money was that it has to be hard and I have to earn it in order to make it. And so I was constantly putting myself in these situations where things were hard, things were challenging, they were difficult. And I felt like I needed to go through these types of processes in order at the end for me to feel like I earned this, like I deserve this. But that was a limiting belief of mine, because what I realized is that that's why money came so hard to me. And even though I had the money, it just would go away as fast as, just as fast. And I just couldn't figure out why I couldn't hold on to it. I couldn't figure out why, even when the amount I was making was changing, that the
Mhm.
quality of my life wasn't. So it's really important to address right now, if you're in a place where you're like, oh man, I'm just so disconnected with my spouse or with my children. Okay, what's really underneath that? Because it's not work. Because if you
Right.
take work away, there's something underneath that, where what are you really disconnected from? What are you avoiding? What are you running away from? What are you numbing from? Like, so many of us have ways that we numb. Work is a way to numb. Social media is a way to numb. TV is a way to numb. It's not just drugs and alcohol. They're different things that are just as lethal. They just look different and it looks more,
Yes.
legal. And
Yeah.
so work a lot of times can become like a drug, because it's something, it's easy for us to, go into it and feel like it's a purpose, and it's a great, excuse to be like, hey, I'm working, how could I be at fault for that? It's not that you're at fault, but it's just, is it working for you or is it not? And so the number one thing when I work with my clients is, before we even get to the, are you going to start your own business and what does that look like, is, okay, let's really look at all the different areas of your life, from your well-being, your mental and physical well-being, your relationships with at home, with your children, with your partner, with family, with friends. How's your relationship with yourself? And what does it look like in terms of overall, how is your health, And so
Mhm.
we look at all these different aspects, and we look at, okay, where are you right now, and what is the gap, and we start working on those pieces. Then after that, when we figure out, okay, like, what is really ideally the type of life, like, what would you love it to look like? What does it look like for you to have this 10-10 relationship in all areas of your life? What does it look like for you to be lit up and jumping out of bed? Like, who are you without your job? What would that look like? Because I mean, if anything, COVID has shown us how quickly things that we took for granted can be taken away. And there's so
Mhm.
many people right now in that space of, I don't know who I am without my job. And they've really been struggling with that, because we so often put our identity, not only coincides, but it becomes one with our job. And so, who are you authentically? Who are you? And what is the type of work that really lights you up in the first place? Like, are you in a job where it's just like you're good at it, so you've continued that? Is that even
Mhm.
something that you really enjoy? Or maybe it's a situation of you changing the type of work that you're doing. Or for some people, it is like, hey, I've always had this dream. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Awesome. So let's work on your life alongside of your career. So I really think both those come together. They're not exclusive, mutually exclusive. And I think we got to look at that piece before we even start considering, do you start your own company or not?
Yeah, and lots of great points there. And I think there's so many aspects of what you need to look at when you're at that point of figuring it
Mm,
out, like you mentioned. And so it's not just the job, right? You've got to understand where the other holes are, where the other pieces
mm,
are that are missing for you, because otherwise you're just trying to patch it up with a different job. Or, you know, I've, as Paul mentioned, there's so many people who end up quitting and then trying to start their business, but they haven't fixed the actual problems. And
mm,
so until you can take a look at where you may have those pieces that are missing for you. And I know you alluded to as well, and one of the things that I believe so much in, and I talk about it in my book as well, is the signs that are telling you it's time to change, the signs that the universe is waving in front of you like, hey, do you not see me? I'm trying to tell you to slow down, or I'm trying to tell you need to make a change or make a different decision. And one of the ones that you had talked about is how it impacted your health as well. I mean, it impacted your relationships, it impacted your health. And our body is just there giving us signs that we need to do something differently. So if you take a step back, if you're watching this and have questions, please put them in the chat for Paul and I. We will definitely help answer questions you guys have, whether you're watching the replay or you're watching us live here now. And let us know where it is right now for you that you see some signs. Where are you seeing signs in your life that is telling you might need to make a shift? You might need to make a change. And as you're seeing those, just stop and think about, okay, why is this happening? What do I need to change? And some of it's physical changes, some of it's the emotional change, but emotional and a mindset piece that are so key in what we do. And I know you have a lot to say about this, Paul, on the mindset pieces. So what are some of the things that you see from the mindset perspective that we need to change before we can create the life we truly want?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very key and fundamental aspect of that. And the number one piece is stepping into being 100% responsible for your life. 100% responsible, seeing yourself as the sole uncontested author of your life. So often in the culture, the society that we live in, we hear a ton of narrative around it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. All these things are happening to me. I don't even know where they come from. I don't even know when it's going to stop. There's just nothing I can do about it. It's X, Y, and Z. And all these things are happening to me, happening in my life, out of my control. And so when we live in that narrative, we're living in a space of being victim to our circumstance. And a lot of people don't, we don't walk around being like, oh, I'm victim to my circumstance. A lot of it just looks different. It doesn't necessarily mean you're standing there or you're just complaining or anything like that. Not being the fully 100% responsible in your life, when you're not standing in that place, you're being a victim, which means that if you're any kind of place where you're like, well, there's nothing I can do about this, and you know what the problem is and you don't do anything about it, then you are not standing in seeing that, you know what, I am the one that's actually putting myself in this situation. And if I am, I can do something about it. All of it comes down to a choice. There is a difference between making a choice and making a decision. Most of us make decisions. Decisions come from a place of limitation. They come from a place of what's currently in front of me in my bank account, what's currently in my life right now that gets to dictate what I do. So a lot of times I'll hear the conversation around, well, I'm making a ton of money right now. Well, I have mortgages to pay. Well, I have, my children's tuition, there's things, there's bills. I just can't leave my job. That I can't is the very cancer to transforming your life. The word I can't. And that's why my podcast is about yes, I can, because it really is about you have the ability always within you to make a choice. But most of the time we make a decision, which is coming from a place of, what I can and can't do based on what my previous history was, based on my previous experience, based on I need to see proof before I say yes or no. Making a choice is different. Making a choice comes from a place of vision. It comes from a place of this is the vision that I have for my life, not a dream. That's a little bit different. Dream is just things that we think about, we daydream about, and then nothing ever actually changes. A vision is something that is so powerful. It hasn't happened yet in your life, hasn't happened before possibly. And you standing in it in the future and saying, you know what? I know that I have the power that I can be and do whatever it takes to create that. Now, it might be a different timeline from what you think it might be. It may not be the year or two, but it's really seeing that, you know what, this is the life that I want, and I'm willing to jump and build my wings on the way down. Every single person that has built and built something incredible or made an impact. When you think about the Wright brothers, they came from a place of choice. There was no such thing as an airplane when they were building it, but they were standing in this vision that it gets to be done and they could do it. And same thing with Richard Branson when he created Virgin Airlines. This is where Elon Musk was when he created SpaceX. All of them had a vision. And the vision doesn't always have to be something like, I'm going to create travel to space. It can be just a vision for what's the type of relationship that you want to have at home with your significant other, with your children. What does that look like? What does it look like for you when you wake up for work every single day? Are you lit up? Are you excited to work with the people that you're going to work with? And you can feel that you're making a difference and you feel fulfilled and you feel purposeful. And it's just a life that has you lit up. What does your health look like? All those things are part of a vision. And so when you see what can be possible in terms of, hey, like this is the type of life this is the life that I want to build, then you can make choices where you can say, okay, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know that I am going to take one step forward. I'm going to ask for support. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to reinvent myself to get to this final destination. So that is the number one fundamental place of like, when we step outside of there's nothing I can do about it, or I am locked in by the circumstances in my life, being in that space of victim mentality and stepping into, okay, if I am the sole uncontested author, I am the driver of my life, then what choices can I make today that is going to take me one step in front of the other towards this bigger vision? So that piece, number one, gets to change, because until we're willing to be 100% responsible, there's nothing we can do because we're powerless. It's out of our control. There's nothing we can do about it. But when we step into, okay, you know what? If it's to be, it's up to me to create this. That's when true change and transformation can start.
Absolutely. Love that. Love that. Love that. And you know how much I love talking about decisions. That's what my book is about. And so there's so many things that you've got to step back and say, okay, what do I really want? And I love the way you described the vision, Paula, as like the way that we see what we want in our future. Because until you understand what you want to create, there's absolutely no way you can create it. And that's one of the things I talk about, is that all has to start with that clarity, right? You've got to understand, and you've got to get clear around what you want, around where you want to go, around what you want to do. And so by being able to do that, you can determine, what does that future look like? And I always love to say too, that it's just about, by seeing it, by making a choice, by making that decision, things will start to show up. Like, you don't have to have it all figured out, right? And you know that as much as anyone. Like, you don't have to have every step figured out. Once you make the choice that you're going to make that change, that you're going to do something differently, that you don't want to stay the way you are right now forever, you don't want to be stuck in that cubicle, then things will show up in your life to help you through that. And you may be watching this video today, and Paul or myself have showed up just for you because you needed to hear this. You needed to see this. And people will start popping into your life when you need them. So don't ignore it. Don't ignore the signs coming at you, because there is an opportunity there. And this has been such a great show. And you know, Paul, these are some of my favorite subjects to talk about. And so it has been so fun having this discussion with you. Is there any last thing you want to leave them with? And I think you have a gift to share with them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, Tammy. I know that we can continue talking about it because we're both so passionate about it. So thank you so much for, just, it's such an honor to be on your show. I love the work that you're up to. So thank you so much. First of all, and once again. So just one thing that I want to leave everyone here with is that today is always the best day for a new beginning. Everything that has happened, we're always in this, it's too late, or you know what, like I should have done it yesterday. All of that, today is a new beginning. Today is always the best day for day one, and you can choose it. So no matter what has happened up until this point, no matter all the times that you thought you were going to, but didn't, today is the opportunity to let that go. Today's the perfect day for a new start. So I just want to really share that with you, that you're not too late. You know, it's not too early. It is not, something that should have happened before and now there's no opportunity for it, it will show up, like Tammy says, when you choose it. They always talk about, the teacher shows up when the student is ready. And it's the same thing with opportunities for your life. So when you are ready, the opportunity will show up. And so for anyone that, this conversation really resonates with you in terms of if you're really ready to start on this path of living with purpose, with really doing work that lights you up and really making a change in your life from, being in a place where you're burnt out or unfulfilled and unhappy, I'm more than happy to offer a 30-minute pathway to fulfillment call. On this call, we are going to really get deep into what is your vision that you want for your life? What does that look like for you in terms of this pathway towards really living a fulfilled life, a life that really lights you up, your best version of your life. And we're going to just pave out the path of what that gets to look like for you, as well as really get clear on what that looks like for your end goal, with what it looks like for you to start living with the end in mind. So I believe Tammy's going to have the link to that. If you want to just connect with me, want to find out more about what I do, I have my podcast, like Yes, I Can. So Can is K-A-N podcast. You can find me at yesican.com as well.
Awesome, Paul. That is amazing. And you guys, you've got to take him up on this. I mean, the way you can see Paul's passion. I mean, we can all feel it, right? So feel that emotion, but think about creating that bigger vision for yourselves with him. Think about sitting down and going through this process where you can see what you really want. You create this bigger vision. This is so valuable. Be sure to snatch that up. The link will be in the comments after we are done here. And if you all want to help me out in getting my Amazon bestseller, you can now go pre-order my book, which is You Already Made the Decision, You're Just Not Happy with It. And it's your guide on how to make better decisions or live with the ones you've made. And we are going live on Amazon at April 14th, but you can pre-order your Kindle version today. So whether you are watching this now or after April 14th, you can get your copy on Kindle. So go grab that and grab Paul's free vision planning workshop, or not workshop, but your like strategy call with them to take this to new levels so that you can figure out what it is underlying all of that that's keeping you stuck there and figuring out where you need to go from here. Thank you for joining us today. Stay blessed, get inspired by what you do so that you can inspire others. We will see you next time.